Hello and welcome to Can Month Day 21! We have reached the end! Before I jump into my CanLit TBR, I am just going to do a really quick wrap up. Firstly, I would just like to say that I'm very proud of myself. I am very pleased with the quality of videos that I was able to put out like almost every day. I mean, a lot of them were pretty long, but whatever. And this is a project that, when I first started my channel, that I really wanted to do. So I'm so glad that it came to fruition, and I think it was very successful. And me and Jason from the Heavy Blanks, although that will be changing shortly, are best friends now. So at least something good came out of Can Month. And thank you so much to everyone who has been watching these videos and commenting on them. I live for that shit. And tweeting about them. Like when that happens, I'm like, no, stop. This is too much. So thank you to everyone who has been participating in any way, shape, or form. And it sounds like some people were finding books that sounded interesting to them that they wanted to read, so that's great. I'm glad, other people were enjoying this project. But before I hop right into the TBR, I do just want to point out the 4 books that I really, really, really do recommend from this month, even though obviously you all have your own things you want to read because you have your own particular interests, which I respect. The first is The Electrical Field by Carrie Sakamoto, just because I think that book is super important and that is a massive perspective that is kind of left out of Canadian literature. The second is The Inconvenient India by Thomas King. That should just be required reading for just being a person that lives in Canada. And also I Am Woman by Lee Miracle, not Miracle, which I had in the same video as Thomas King's book on resources on colonialism or colonialism resources, because I recently found out how important this book actually is. Because I read this book a while ago, I kind of just took it as a given that people understood the settler colonial project in Canada to be particularly gendered as well as raced, and that Indigenous women were specifically targeted. However, that is apparently not the case in academic literature, and there is just now kind of being a lot of people writing on the subject. I'm writing a paper on that right now, and I was talking to my prof about using this as a resource, and she was talking about how when this book came out in 1996, that it just came out of the left and she got a lot of criticism for it because she is specifically talking about the experiences that Indigenous women have to live with in a settler colonial society. And that was like controversial, apparently. So again, please read this book. I found it for $13 on Book Depository, so I'll link that down below. Finally, to get into the TBR, this is going to be such a long video. So the first books I'm going to show you were the books that I had specifically set aside to get through this month, most of which I did not finish. So I started quite a few of them. The first one I started was The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje, and if you are anywhere familiar with his writing, you know it's just prose. Like, that's what it's described as being, and you just have to pay such close attention and have so much concentration when reading it, otherwise you just get like swept up in all just the words that he's saying, and I'm like, wait, where did the story go after like a page? So I just could not deal with that. Another book that I started and then didn't finish is Bastards and Boneheads by Will Ferguson, which this and the next 3 that I'm going to be talking about I hauled in the only book haul I've done on this channel. I got like 2 chapters in and I was really enjoying it. It's really good, but I just wasn't able to like get through it fast enough because it is just kind of like a more interesting history textbook. And the other one that I started most recently and I took off the dust jacket is The In-Between World of Vikram Lal by M.J. Vasanji, and I've again like just barely started it, and it's good. The setting is super interesting, a lot of really interesting stuff in there, but it just didn't like grab me and like compel me to like keep reading it, and I got really busy with school and but I'll finish it soon. Something that I'm also thinking of doing is doing another Can week, because I have all that stuff to finish up and some other stuff on my shelf they're going to see in a second. So tell me if that's something that you would be interested in, maybe. Can month's kind of intense, but I think a week's pretty good. But when I'm able to do this in terms of like timing and dealing with school and stuff would either be like January or like May and then the rest of the summer. So I know that's like super far off, but let me know if you would be like at least vaguely interested in that or like participating in that one as well. Okay, so I also have a bunch of Canlit just on my TBR shelves, and the first one is The Back of the Turtle by Thomas King, which is actually a signed copy because I saw him when he was doing his book tour when it first came out in like November of last year, and I still haven't read it. And then I have just a bunch of Michael Ondaatje books, which I don't plan on reading like consecutively or right away at all, but they are on my shelf for whenever I do want to read them. The first is The Cat's Table, which I think is his newest release. Then I have In the Skin of a Lion, and I have Divisadero. Another one that I have on my shelf is The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism by Naomi Klein. She's the author of No Logo, which I haven't read, but my mom has it upstairs on her shelves. And I just feel as like a Canadian political science student, I should probably have read Naomi Klein. I also always want to call her Naomi Campbell, which is embarrassing. And it's always on the bookshelves in my profs' offices and stuff, and I just like feel left out of the party at this point. And she did also come out with a new one recently. This changes everything about the environment and how everything is terrible. I actually think she's Stephen Lewis's daughter-in-law. Like, I'm pretty sure she's married to his son. Another book that I have is a very special one, and that is Dancing Backwards by Sharon Carstairs and Tim Higgins, A Social History of Canadian Women in Politics. So it's kind of like a textbook too, and it's basically highlighting all the women that were important in Canadian political history, because that's something that's completely left out of any mainstream class you'll take ever in schools. I actually work for an organization who has done something really cool with this textbook, so there should be hopefully a really cool video on that coming at some point. I'd like to say soon, but and then another book is Thinking Through Essays on Feminism, Marxism, and Anti-Racism by Himani Banerjee. I didn't know this was Canlit. I bought this at the same time as Bread Out of Stone by Dion Brand, because, you know, that feminist, Marxist, anti-racist literature always gets me. I didn't actually know she was a Canadian until she was referenced in a bunch of readings that I'm doing for the class I'm in right now, and she just has some scathing critiques about liberal multiculturalism, and I'm like, yes, thank you. And then I have some more books that I kind of mentioned throughout the month. The first is there is a newish duology by Kit Pearson called The Whole Truth and Nothing But the Truth, I think. Also Anne-Marie MacDonald's newest book, Adult Onset, is coming out in paperback soon, I think. Also, the rest of Joseph Boyden's books. I think there's 2 other novels and a short story collection, pretty sure. Obviously, the rest of Angie Gables and other Ella Montgomery. More of Dion Brand. She's written so much stuff, I don't even know where to start, but we'll figure it out. I also need to read Obasan by Joy Kogawa, which I talked about in the Electrical Field video, because that is like the book about Canadian-Japanese internment. You may have noticed throughout this month that there was no Margaret Atwood, and that is because I have not read Margaret Atwood yet. I know, okay. So thinking of starting with The Handmaid's Tale. Also Robber Bride sounds like it'd be a good place to start. I've also heard Orcs and Crake is another kind of good starter one. Although I have a friend who like loves science fiction, loved Orcs and Crake, but then hated the other 2 books that came out after it as a trilogy. I don't know. So something that's been on my TBR forever is there is a comic biography of Louis Riel. And on that same vein of graphic novel comic, I haven't read Hark a Vagrant by Kate Beaton because I'm just a trash human being, apparently. Another famous female Canadian author that I'm always reminded I need to read whenever I watch any of Jason's videos is Alice Munro. So thinking of probably starting with The Lives of Girls and Women, because I think that's her first book and her only novel. Also, because of Jason, I've been dying to read She the Mountain by Vivek Shraya. I'm always looking for queer lit suggestions just in general, but if you have any specific Canadian ones, that would be incredible. Please let me know if you think there is anything that I'm missing from my TBR, any specific books or authors that I should be checking out and I'm not doing so.